Welcome back to the Formation Lab with Todd and Brad, and we're going to hop right into it, Todd. What a chaotic,
Oh,
crazy Monaco Grand Prix. And Todd, we talked about in our preview, and if you listen to any kind of Formula One content, you know that Monaco is not the most exciting race for passing. This race, the 2026 edition, definitely featured some more overtaking. But Todd, from lap one, we had just chaos the whole way through. So I'm going to turn it over to you. Give us your thoughts on the race, the chaos that was the 2026 Monaco Grand Prix.
yeah, Brad, welcome, and I'm excited. You and I got to watch it, and it was fun. Uh, and then, with Monaco, it delivered exactly what Monaco always does, is drama.
Hmm.
And in this case, it wasn't necessarily the drivers. If you got to watch it, the tarmac came apart a little
Yeah.
bit. They had speeding in the pit lanes, and that was more than one driver. And then, with a couple of yellows and red flags, that then caused all kind of craziness. Even George got out of his car, went over the fence, and went to the stewards while they were on red flag to plead his case. So it was crazy. There was some great winners. There were some painful losers here. We did see 21 overtakes this time,
Hmm.
so I think we did see a little bit more. It was in some areas that didn't. And as just said, we had 11 penalties that, occurred, and a lot of that was in the speeding in the pit lane. And I'm not gonna go into it, but it was crazy, that some of them were doing what they were supposed to. And then the stewards had over 15 different investigations that they had to work through. So, Brad, I mean, Monaco wasn't boring. It was
No.
chaotic, just in Monaco's own way, and yet we have not seen wet tires to be
Mhm.
done. But I think it was amazing, Brad. What did you take away before we get to some of the winners and losers?
Yeah, it was highly entertaining. I think the thing that stood out for me is you had Max go out lap one, Lando
Yeah,
go out. I think around the mid 40s, and then Charles there, and then George did not score on the points. So this was a really good opportunity for some midfield teams to get some critical points. Of
yeah,
course, you still had a Mercedes, a Ferrari, Red Bull, and McLaren in the top four. They all scored points, but Todd, everyone else there was considered the quote unquote midfield team. So
yeah.
that was this is a race that we're talking about. Everyone is kind of battling for fifth place behind the big four, and Monaco was big for every one of those teams to score points. Of course, we'll get into it, but not everyone did score points. We saw a team finally score their first points of the year. Another team thought they scored their first points, and
Yeah.
and it didn't. So, yeah, great race. And I thought you brought up a good point. It was good to see a little bit more overtaking. Now, some of that was due to some penalties and different stuff, but
Yeah.
I thought we saw some. I thought we saw some good racing. At Monaco, a place that and we talked about this in our preview. It's more about what you do on Saturday in qualifying, but the race was highly entertaining.
Agree.
Um, I thought for a second there, I was like, oh man, the way the tarmac was tearing up, I didn't know if they were going to finish, and thankfully
Yeah.
the FIA did a really really good job of getting on top of it and doing it. But I think that is going to be something that they really evaluate, and they're going to make sure that doesn't happen going forward in 2027. So I'll turn it back over to you. Give us kind of your winners and losers from Sunday's race.
Yeah, Brad, and as you said with the qualifying, we thought that in our preview show, that's what you need to watch, folks.
Yeah.
Well, the race actually turned out to be just as exciting, and the
Hmm.
winners are, at what point do we stop calling Kimi the future? I don't think
He's the now.
I think he's a champion. That's five in a row,
Yeah.
and somewhere everybody was saying that Mercedes wasn't going to show up. And he's driving the same car George did. So,
Yeah.
Kimi was a winner. He took pole and he led. At one point, he led almost 30 seconds.
That's crazy.
30 seconds. And without the red flag, he had to restart, which, he had Lewis and others right next to him experience, and he outdid him again. And so, that was something that I think he's on the championship run. Now that something's going to happen,
Absolutely. Hmm.
no doubt about it. But his head is unbelievable for a 19-year-old, and it was the first Italian to win Monaco since 2002,
That's
I
super
think,
cool.
and the first teenager ever.
Yeah, that's super cool.
So that was one of them. Lewis, I think,
Hmm.
showed up. I think he's quietly becoming Ferrari's driver, and as we talked about in the preview, he's ditching some of the simulators. He's like, I'm going to
Hmm.
go back to, let me just think about it. And
Yep.
he showed it. And let me tell you, if you didn't get to watch the interviews right after the race, while they were pulling the cars in and doing the, quick 1, 2, 3 winners, if you'll go back and watch, Lewis was squatting behind Kimi's
Yeah.
car in 3 places before he went to take the microphone. You know what he was doing? He was looking at that thing and saying, all right,
Yeah.
how do we get ourselves there? So I think he's become it. And Isack, if you didn't get to go and listen to that, Isack, man, that guy was having problems with
Hmm.
his car. And if you listen to some of his interviews, he was wore out, even though he got third place. He was like having problems with the car. He's very animated, and he had some strong people on. And then finally, my driver there, Alex Albon from Williams, finally worked through some things and helping Williams. Carlos could have been there. He had some misfortunes, but who were your top? And I'll finish with the teams. Racing Bull, as you just
Hmm.
said, the midfield, they weren't the midfield necessarily, but they got an opportunity and they showed up.
Yeah.
And Leon Lawson really performed strong, and Limbaugh. And,
Yeah.
he had problems. So that was mine. What about you and your winners, Brad?
Yeah, I think the first big one for me was Fernando Alonso.
Yeah.
He able to squeeze a point there right at the end. And Todd, we've talked about it on camera and off camera. It's been a really, really, really horrible start for Aston Martin. Lawrence Stroll and some others have invested a lot into that team. They have gotten a lot of, they've gotten a lot of personnel just from Red Bull and some other teams, but they've put a lot into that car,
Yeah.
and it has not been easy for them. Lance Stroll, don't that was not his fault. He went off in the exact same place Charles did. He did it
Yeah.
before Charles did. It was just that tarmac tearing up,
That gravel. It
but
wasn't a little rubber. It was actually
exactly,
gravel.
exactly. So Fernando Alonso and Aston Martin
Yeah.
a big winner. Um,
I
you
agree.
know,
And knew he was down looking at the other
yep,
cars.
yep.
But he had his clipboard out, so they're
Yep.
really starting to hone in. We're going to see something
Absolutely,
different.
absolutely. You mentioned Liam Lawson. I tell you, Todd. He jumped to he was in a Red Bull last year and really struggled. And then I think it was after I'm trying to remember. It was after
5 races, I think.
well, no, I think it was
5 or
after
6.
two or three. And
Okay.
I can't remember exactly. He got ditched really, really early in
Yeah.
2025, and I will say he's done a really, really good job for Racing Bulls. He is. Him and Lindblad are really an exciting duo.
Yeah.
They did a great job, and how about Esteban Ocon there for Haas?
Yeah.
Big points from them, but just a couple of things that you mentioned. Man, Kimmy. I mean, if he keeps this up, I mean, we're going to be talking about he's one of the greatest of all time. Here in a couple of years, and I'm hoping we get 15 or 20 years of this guy. He's
I
unbelievable.
agree.
Big weekend for Lewis and big weekend for Isack. Isack need to have one. Max with a really
Yeah.
unfortunate start, stalling out and having to retire the car there on lap one. But big points for Isack. I felt bad for him. He was under constant investigation. I mean, I think
Wasn't his fault either.
no, and I mean, you mentioned just about it seemed like three-fourths of the field had a pit lane speeding penalty. I personally think, I don't know if the sensor was messed up. I know Zach Brown, McLaren CEO, said, Oscar was speeding, but anyway, it was just kind of crazy that,
Agree.
we may see one or two in a typical race. I mean, Todd, like I said, it felt like there was 10 drivers that got a pit lane speeding penalty. But anyway, I say all that to say Isack was under constant investigation, and I'm happy for him that he was able to keep that podium. I mean, I know he had to go see the stewards after the race, and it was up in the air for a while that he may not keep the podium, and he did. So great weekend for him, and on a tough weekend for a tough race for Red Bull with Max, but he was able to salvage a podium for
Yeah.
them. So, Todd, give me a couple of losers that you have from the race.
Well, Charles would have finished third, second or third, right?
Mm-hmm.
Until he went over the gravel and in the
Yeah.
same place that Stroll. He's saying that he was never comfortable the whole weekend because of his
Yeah.
brakes,
And,
and
and Todd, he was still very adamant when he went back to the paddock that it was not where he ran over, it was the brakes. He was
yeah,
he was frustrated at the team.
he can
So
never get confidence, and that's happened
yeah,
over the last three races, really. And
yeah,
this was home course. He got to
yeah.
sleep in his own bed. He signed a new contract, so Charles lost out. But I did see a little gleam of we've got a solution coming.
Mm-hmm.
And so they know about it. They're about to get in some straight. So, nobody took it worse than Charles just because all his fans. George
Oh
Mercedes
man.
won. George didn't. And man, he was continuing to struggle. And I don't know what it is. And as we just said, also Max, who knows what happened? His car just didn't start. And he's been talking about that. And if you haven't read, you can. We've just found out that the Red Bulls have the best engine.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that in a little bit, what that means. But they've got the best engine. That's a Ford engine. It's a brand new engine, and so
Mm-hmm.
they're just struggling. And so, Pierre Gasly had a tough one. He
Oh
could have he
yeah.
could have been there, and just different things happened. And then Carlos in the restart got twisted around, and he's usually good there. And
Mm-hmm.
some of the stats were saying that he always finished. And then Cadillac had an opportunity,
Oh man.
and,
Yeah.
and it just messed up. But they're making headway. And I guess the other loser here. Maybe, and folks that don't understand how the pit lane is, they do take a picture when you enter. They take a picture when you're supposed to be at 60, and if you're above, and some of these were point oh 0.04 above,
Yeah.
and it could have been the entrance. So, folks, that's where the speeding was. They have a button on their steering wheel that, so who knows? And you and I talked about it. The GPS wasn't always working well down near the bay.
Mm-hmm.
So be it. It is what it is. So, before we go into really what matters going forward here, who are some of the people that you thought just lost out there, Brad?
I mean, it, and I'm getting into McLaren a little bit here, but man, tough weekend for us overall.
Yeah.
I was expecting us to be a little bit more competitive, and then I quickly saw after the three practice sessions that was going to be tough. Really proud of Oscar. Oscar,
Yeah.
he had a pit lane speeding penalty, a 5 second penalty, but it looked like for a while that he may even be on the podium if Isaac would have gotten a demoted with a penalty. But Oscar salvaged fourth, which was really big. But Todd, another problem in Lando's car. Lando was on, I think lap 47,
Yeah.
48, and another battery issue. And, they got to get Lando's car worked out. He's talented. Lando's my guy, but, to
Yeah.
me,
I hated it for you.
and I've said this, I think Oscar's got a little bit better feel of the car this year than Lando does. And I
Yeah, I
say that,
agree.
and Lando still won a sprint race in Miami, and Lando has looked good, but,
You can
two,
tell just by his demeanor. He's a little off. He just can't quite
yes, no, he
figure
can't,
it out. And
and I
maybe
don't,
Oscar's hiding it too, but Oscar's
yeah,
at least doing something with it.
right,
Lando sounds like he's sometimes just giving up.
yeah, but they've got to fix the reliability issues in the
Yeah.
car, and
The battery.
I'm hoping that Mercedes is gonna provide some some things to help them with. I think a guy that I really felt bad for is Pierre Gasly.
Hmm.
He thought he was on for a podium with Alpine, and he had to serve some penalties there, and man, that was tough. And then I just kind of want to reiterate because I thought it was a big one. Man, George Russell. I mean, I don't know that we've seen Todd a guy in worse form. I mean, everyone thought he was just going to blow this season out of the water. He wins an Australian, and everyone was saying, "Let's go ahead and give him the championship." And boom,
Yeah.
here comes 19-year-old Kimi, and Todd. George has been fine. He was okay in China China and Japan, but ever since
Yeah.
then he hasn't. I mean, you're talking about a DNF in Canada and obviously a 12th place finish here in Monaco. George is in some serious trouble, and I don't think when I
Agree.
say that, I don't think Mercedes is in like I don't think he's going to lose his
No.
seat or anything like that. But I think everyone is realizing that Kimmy's driver number one now, and if these two are in, if there's some kind of things that come up later in the year, they're going to give preferential treatments, which they should to Kimi because he's the world
Yep.
championship
And
leader.
ask
So
George to slow down the field or something. I mean, they're going to use
I
him as a
mean,
ploy.
so I think these two have already had some
Yeah.
super competitive racing in Canada. I think it's continued to go forward, but Georgia's driver number 2 right now. He is quickly, and I'm saying here in these next 4 or 5 races, when we're all in Europe, these next races are all in Europe. Georgia's got to start getting some P1s, or else,
Yeah.
this is, and Todd, my last point before I turn it back over to you here, Lewis is now in P2 in the World Drivers' Championship,
He
and
is.
so Lewis has done an incredible job, but George, I mean, it's just like he hit his high in Melbourne, and it's been downhill since then.
Yeah, no, and I'm with you, Brad. And as we go forward, let's just close the book here on George. George went through the years of Mercedes not having a good vehicle
Right, right.
and said, okay, I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait. And even last year's contract was signed later in the year. Here was his chance.
Yeah.
And yeah, Kimmy is better, but man, shouldn't have got him going. But anyway, it's another day, another story here. But as we go forward into Barcelona and the Europe, back to backs here as we get into the summer there, Kimmy's real. I mean, he's the biggest
Yeah.
story in Formula One. There's not hype anymore. It's not potential. It is all right. How is he going to handle this? He's going to have Max back, I think, because they're going to figure that car out in Red Bull. Lewis continues delivering, and I think
Hmm.
Ferrari now is, if they can figure out the engine in the straights, and some of the thing, Lewis is going to, I think, come shining through. I think Charles is going to get
Absolutely.
stuck here. And then as I keep looking at it, Racing Bulls now are for real. They're no
Hmm.
longer surprised. They're just figuring themselves out, and they're a legitimate threat every weekend, I think. And I think that's going to really come in big as we go. And, the next race in Barcelona is one of the most challenging because it does have the curves, it does have the speed,
Yeah.
it does have I mean, it's going to be a tough one, and who knows what the
Hmm.
heat will be like.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think in the end, Monaco tested it, everything. The walls played their things, their nerves, the strategy, it all played out. And, Kimmy left with a trophy, got to jump in the water, at 19. I mean, wow, his dad was the
Yeah.
first one he hugged. Lewis has got stronger. And then, Hadjar is coming around. I think we're going to see a lot that we're going, and it's just going to be exciting. So,
It's
Brad,
gonna be super fun.
what do you think as we go forward here as we close out?
Yeah, so a couple things come to my mind. You hit on this. I think we've got a legitimate 3-place fight now for second
Mhm.
place with Ferrari. Uh, we've talked about. I mean, Charles has got to get things figured out. From McLaren side, they've got to figure out what's going on with Lando's car, and then they've got a Red Bull. Red Bull's in it, Todd. This was a great weekend for Red Bull.
Yep.
They showed some pace. They show that they can hang with other three. They've got to get more consistency, not consistency, but they've just got to get both guys scoring points at the same time. We've seen
Yep.
Max score points and Isaac doesn't. Of course, it was the opposite this week. So I think all three of those teams just trying to put things together.
Yeah, I agree.
The one other point that I want to make, kind of, as we wrap up here, and you mentioned it. If you have not seen it, the FIA came out today and said Red Bull with the top engine. What does that mean? We're probably going to talk about this more in our preview in
Yeah.
Barcelona, so stay tuned for that. But that means that Mercedes and Ferrari now get a chance to have more upgrades this season and next season, and Red Bull does not. So we're going to hit on that some more, but that was pretty big news, Todd, moving forward for
Yeah,
the
it
rest of the
is.
season. So
Yeah, I know. That's why Lewis was looking at Mercedes and them to
that's
say,
right.
okay, where's a screwdriver that I can do a
That's
little
right.
tweaking? I mean,
That's
it's going to
right.
be
So
exciting.
it's going to be exciting. So thank you all for tuning in again.
Yep.
Super, super exciting Monaco Grand Prix. And as I mentioned, we're going to be back later this week with our preview of the Barcelona Grand Prix. Todd mentioned it. It's a very technical track. It's going to be fun. It's always an exciting race there in Spain. Going to see a lot of Carlos Sainz and Fernando Alonso
Yeah.
fans. So that's going to be fun. But we'll have that for you coming up later in the week. So I encourage you to stay tuned for that video. Hit that subscribe button. We appreciate the support, and please hit that subscribe button. Give us your comments on what you thought about the Monaco Grand Prix and all of its chaos and craziness. And finally, would really appreciate if you hit that like button. We're just a couple of regular guys talking elite racing. So once again, thank you for joining Todd and Brad on the Formation Lap, and we will see you next time.